Welcome to a pocket of the internet where I share my heart with yours as I meditate on introspection, empathy, and what that means for the artistic soul. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it says, "With much wisdom comes more sorrow, and he who increases in knowledge increases in grief." And I find this so interesting because I have noticed a pattern with people that like to read a lot and are artistic. And these two groups of people, they kind of expand their consciousness outside of their own bubble and outside of their own consciousness and, outside of what they're experiencing in this life. And with people that read, for example, you read and you start to discover thoughts, right? Thoughts from other people, the way that other people articulate their experiences, and you start to pick up these emotions that the writer is trying to emote through the literature, not only through fictional works, but also through nonfiction pieces that are actually portraying and retelling a story that actually happened, right? Like through a novel. And artists are also very much just operating through the same kind of wavelength because artists like to pick up other people's experiences and transmute them into their own kind of way of interpretation and gathering other people's emotions and experiences through their own pieces of artwork, whether it be like a song or film, whatever it is. And so these two groups of people are empaths. They're very empathetic. They like to look beyond their bubble, beyond their present reality. And when you do that, when you are willing to take the risk to go outside of your own perception, you risk knowledge, you risk gaining wisdom through other people's experiences, people that may know more than you, right? People that have experienced more than you. If you're able to pick these things up from other people and sort of integrate them into your knowledge, into your wisdom and understanding of the world around you, then this increases a lot of grief. You risk increasing in sorrow. And when I remember reading that scripture and just being confused, because wisdom and knowledge are things that we want to acquire, right? These are things that we yearn for. I yearned for these things, and I didn't really understand how something that could be so valuable could also come with a price. And this is something that just comes with the risk that you have to be willing to take if you have been created to be this empathetic person. If God has created you to be an artist or a reader or someone that is willing to explore beyond them for whatever reason. The brain chemistry behind the introverted mind reveals a lot of why we are the way that we are. And a lot of this has to do with the increase of blood flow on the areas of our brain that are predispositioned to abstract thinking and heightened sensitivity to external stimulation, which is why it is so much easier for the introverted mind to find pleasure in low stimulating circumstances. And I find this especially useful for inspiration as an artist, and I just find myself gaining inspiration from the simplest things around me. I really feel like this is a blessing from God, and that He created us to be this way for a very specific reason. I think that it just makes sense for empathetic people to have an outlet for the internal dialogue in the mind and in the heart that we experience daily. It's so important to channel these emotions and these thought patterns through music, through art. And it's just so important to have an outlet, because I don't know, I may just be speaking like through myself, but I've just seen a lot of people that are very similar to me, and we're also very introspective people because there's so much going on inside. Sometimes it's a little difficult to translate those things in a more external way, because I just feel like it's a lot for people that don't actually know me to receive. And like my friends, my husband, my family, like they all have access to these innermost parts of myself, like I'm able to freely express myself and share my thoughts and my heart. But when I'm in unfamiliar situations, I just become very like introverted into myself, because I just feel like this is something that a lot of empaths carry, where we feel like we may come across as too much for some people, too much too soon. So we would rather just kind of retreat into ourselves. But this is why art has become such an important part of me. And it's such an important part of those really quiet souls that are not actually that quiet inside, because there is a universal need to be heard and to be seen to some capacity. And this is just a very normal human thing that we were designed to have. God is an expressive spirit, right? He is creator. He is he is someone with a lot to say, and just because someone has a lot to say doesn't always equate to a lot of words. God speaks through everything in creation. He speaks through his word, and the language is the primary mechanism for human communication. And so because of that, he left us words, right? He left us scripture. But in scripture, we begin to see and recognize who he is through everything else that he has created. And so he speaks to us through other people, through the way that other people behave and things about them and creation and nature and the way that the world and the universe works. And a lot of these things that we learn about him, they're not communicated through words. And so I feel like we are tapping into a very integral part of who Jesus is when we create art and express what's inside, express our thoughts and emotions and feelings and understanding through art. Because I like the saying, a picture can tell 1,000 words, right? And it's so cliche and so cringe, but it's actually so much deeper. It's actually really deep, despite how cliche it is, because it's so true. One single painting could have 1,000 meanings outside of my own, And obviously, like, I'm always very clear with what my paintings are trying to communicate, but even so, I get DMs from people and messages and comments, and they're tapping into a different part of what that means for them. And it's so interesting to see art as a projection of ourselves and everyone that views it, and it's such an important means of communication. So I hope you enjoyed this random stream of consciousness and that it left you with something to think about, but most importantly that it inspired you to keep digging onto those inner parts of yourself that long to create. And I just hope you were able to relate in some way. I feel like I grew up kind of watching people that were just like very extroverted and just very not like myself, and so I just felt like there wasn't a space for me in this kind of creative world that I wanted to be. But I hope that you find yourself in this video and kind of relate to just being that kind of soul that is quiet but also has a lot to say. And I feel like especially when you find God, like there is this just fire and this desire to speak light and speak truth. And sometimes it's a little conflicting, right? Because these are things that are naturally occurring in you. But it's just the Spirit of God, right? That empowers us to share light and love and truth. But yeah, I hope that inspires you to keep creating whatever capacity the Lord has gifted you in. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will talk to you later. God bless you.